You know that incredibly specific physical sensation?
Oh, absolutely.
Like you sit down at your desk, it's a Monday morning, the coffee is perfectly brewed.
Right. Everything is perfect. Yeah.
Exactly. The workspace is entirely clear of clutter, and you have this, meticulously crafted massive to-do list sitting right in front of you.
The master plan.
Yeah, the master plan. And you are entirely ready to be the single most productive human being alive.
Right.
And then you just freeze.
Yeah. You just hit a wall.
You stare at the screen, and a very real, very physical wave of paralysis just sort of washes over you. Instead of conquering the world, you find yourself utterly incapable of executing a single task.
It is a totally universal phenomenon. And, you know, it's important to realize it's not a character flaw.
Right.
It's actually a biological response to the towering monuments of future productivity we build for ourselves. We construct these massive expectations, and then we are genuinely terrified to take the first step inside.
Well, our mission for this deep dive is to tear down the mechanics of that exact paralysis. We are figuring out why the traditional pursuit of, perfect discipline is actually destroying your ability to get anything done.
Which is a huge shift in perspective.
It really is. And far more importantly, we are going to look at the antidote, mapping out the specific, practical daily habits that bypass this mental gridlock.
We have a really brilliant stack of materials driving our analysis today. We are pulling insights from the ease of true discipline, the paradox of perfect tools, and the power of low-stakes consistency.
Okay, let's unpack this, because what these materials reveal completely flips standard productivity advice on its head.
It really does.
I mean, the prevailing wisdom we've all been fed is that achievement requires a master schedule, a flawless routine, and, a titanium-clad sense of willpower.
Yeah, we've been conditioned to believe that productivity equals absolute control.
Right.
Like, we try to map out every single variable of a project before we take a single step. We want the timeline color-coded, the subtasks categorized.
The dependencies linked, all of it.
Exactly. But this brings us to a concept from the first source, known as the paradox of discipline. The intense need to exert perfect control over our workflow is the exact mechanism that causes the paralysis.
So wait, it's not a lack of willpower that stops us, it's the planning itself.
Yes, it comes down to cognitive load. When you map out a flawless, multi-step, perfectly optimized master plan, you are maxing out your working memory before you have even engaged in the actual work.
Oh, wow.
Your brain can only hold so many active variables at once. So when you demand that it process a massive, intricate sequence of future events, it perceives that cognitive overload as a genuine threat.
It's like trying to run a full marathon on your very first day of training rather than just putting on your shoes.
That's a great way to look at it.
Or, it's like trying to load a massive 100-gigabyte modern video game onto a clunky computer from the late 90s.
Oh, yeah.
The system's RAM is completely overwhelmed just trying to boot up the menu screen. The computer doesn't process the game slowly, it just completely crashes before the game even opens. We are crashing our own internal systems by trying to hold the entire master schedule in our RAM at once.
That is a highly accurate comparison. And when that mental RAM maxes out, it triggers an amygdala response.
The fear center. Right.
Exactly. The amygdala is the threat detection center of your brain. And the thing is, it doesn't differentiate between the threat of a physical danger, like a tiger, and the threat of a massive, overwhelming cognitive burden.
So it just reacts.
Right. It just initiates a freeze response.
Yeah.
You aren't just stressed. Your brain is literally shutting down your executive function to protect you from the avalanche of expectations you just created.
Which means the anxiety of the perfect plan literally builds a neurological wall you cannot climb over. The expectation itself is the obstacle. But the alternative presented in these materials is a totally different definition of discipline. The premise is that true discipline isn't about rigid perfection. It is about finding the easy way.
Yeah, we have to completely uncouple the idea of hard work from suffering. We tend to think that if a task doesn't feel agonizing, we aren't doing it right.
Yeah, for sure. No pain, no gain. Right.
Exactly. But finding the easy way means stripping away the artificial barriers of stress and control that we place in front of the objective.
See, I need to push back on this concept of the easy way, because in the real world, there are serious stakes.
Sure, absolutely.
If I am tasked with drafting a quarterly financial analysis for my company's board of directors, there is no easy way that doesn't get me fired. Like if I submit a lazy, half-baked report because I was avoiding a cognitive burden, I'm out of a job.
Yeah.
How do we separate finding the easy way from just being, well, giving up or being lazy?
What's fascinating here is we are confusing the quality of the final deliverable with the friction of the entry point.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
Finding the easy way absolutely does not mean compromising the final output. It means removing the artificial barriers to starting the output.
So an artificial barrier would be the narrative I'm spinning in my head about the quarterly report rather than the data itself.
Precisely. The actual work of the financial report is pulling numbers from a database and typing analysis into a document.
Right.
The artificial barrier is the internal monologue telling you, this report must be a groundbreaking masterpiece of financial literature. The board must be blown away by my genius, and I cannot take a single break until it's finished.
Oh, man. Yeah, I've been there.
That narrative is what maxes out the mental RAM. Finding the easy way means dropping the narrative about the board's reaction, opening a blank document, and just typing the first line of raw data. You're making the entry point easy, which is what allows the high-quality work to eventually happen.
So the big plan is just a giant wall of artificial stress we build for ourselves. But if we know that building these massive, flawless plans triggers this amygdala freeze, why are we so incredibly obsessed with doing it? Why do we keep falling into this trap?
Well, it seems it comes down to the illusion of control that our modern tools give us. We retreat to our tools because they offer a safe harbor from the vulnerability of execution.
A safe harbor.
Yeah. When the actual task feels too cognitively heavy, we seek out a proxy activity, something that feels like work but doesn't carry the risk of failure.
And this naturally leads into the second source. This introduces a behavior pattern that is frankly uncomfortable to look at, called optimization addiction.
Oh, it's brutal.
It is the habit of spending excessive amounts of time looking for the absolute best app, the perfect template, or the ultimate organizational system.
Right.
It's that familiar scenario where you decide you need to get your professional life organized, but instead of actually categorizing your emails or writing your code, you spend 4 hours watching YouTube reviews comparing different digital workspace apps.
And then you spend another 3 hours color-coding a brand new, highly complex digital dashboard that contains 0 actual tasks.
Yes, it is a vicious loop. You convince yourself that you cannot possibly start the real work until the surrounding system is entirely flawless. You tell yourself, I can't start outlining this presentation until I find the ultimate note-taking software that seamlessly integrates with my calendar.
And the hidden mechanism driving optimization addiction is dopamine.
Really? Dopamine?
Yeah. Modern productivity tools are designed with incredible user interfaces. Dragging a task block from the to-do column to the in-progress column triggers a small dopamine hit.
Oh, absolutely it does.
Watching tutorials about productivity systems triggers a sense of potential and accomplishment. We are hacking our own reward circuitry. We get the chemical reward of having finished a task just by setting up the framework for a task.
So we are snacking on dopamine junk food instead of eating the actual meal. It feels like we're being highly strategic, but we are just engaging in a very sophisticated disguise for inaction.
It is the ultimate shield against the messy reality of doing the work. Like setting up a Notion template is clean. The rules are clear.
Right.
But writing a difficult essay or coding a complex algorithm or having a difficult conversation with a client that is inherently messy. It involves dead ends, frustration, and the realization that you might not be as good at it as you want to be. Optimization addiction protects us from that vulnerability.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Because there is a very real concept in software development and business called technical debt.
Yes, there is.
If I just start throwing raw data into a basic unorganized spreadsheet without taking the time to build a proper relational database, I am going to spend 3 weeks cleaning up that massive mess down the line. Isn't finding the perfect tool and setting up the perfect system just responsible architecture? Surely preparation has structural value.
Preparation has massive structural value, but there's a razor-thin line between responsible architecture and a trap.
Okay.
The distinction lies in execution. Preparation becomes a trap the exact moment it prevents execution from beginning.
I see. Yes, sharpening the axe before you chop the tree is basic logic. But optimization addiction is spending 3 weeks researching the metallurgical properties of different high-carbon steel axe blades, while the tree sits there completely untouched.
You never actually swing the axe.
You never swing. The moment your research into the database structure becomes the excuse for not inputting the first line of data, you have crossed into optimization addiction. The materials we're examining are brutal on this point. Good enough is vastly superior to never starting because you are still out there endlessly searching for the best. You have
Right.
to step into the arena and actually do the flawed, messy work.
Okay, so we've dismantled the towering expectations of the master plan. We understand the cognitive overload that leads to the amygdala freeze, and we've recognized that our obsession with finding perfect systems is often a dopamine-driven defense mechanism against the vulnerability of real work.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? How do we actually get things done if we strip away our reliance on massive plans and perfect tools? This transitions us to the final source. Right. This is where we shift from theory into the mechanics of daily action. If waiting for the perfect time or the perfect plan or the ultimate tool is a trap, the solution is astonishingly simple in concept, though difficult for high achievers to accept.
And that is.
The solution is simply to start. And to bypass the cognitive gridlock we discussed earlier, we utilize a strategy called low-stakes consistency.
Low stakes consistency. It immediately feels entirely different than the high stakes master plan.
Lowering the stakes is how you bypass the brain's threat detection system. The core rule of this approach is profound. Do a little, even if it's not very good.
Now, even if it's not very good, goes against every piece of academic and professional conditioning we have ever received.
Wow.
We are relentlessly trained to always do our absolute best.
But demanding that you always do your best is the exact artificial barrier causing the paralysis.
Right.
If your baseline requirement for starting a task is that the output must be exceptional, you will wait forever for the perfect conditions. And the conditions will never be perfect.
No.
If you demand perfection, progress dies. If you accept not very good, you can start right now, this very second.
Let's get incredibly practical here, because the real value of these materials is in the specific daily small tasks they prescribe. Let's map out exactly what low-stakes consistency looks like for the listener sitting at their desk right now.
The framework provides very clear, granular examples of how to implement this. The first specific habit is tailored for mental or project-based work. The daily task is this: do 5 minutes of work.
Just 5 minutes, not a Pomodoro timer of 25 minutes, 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Because 5 minutes of work is infinitely better than 0 minutes of work. If you're staring at a massive, terrifying project, let's say writing a thesis and feeling completely paralyzed, you tell yourself you're only going to type for 5 minutes, and then you're allowed to stop.
Which feels completely doable.
Exactly. You're lowering the stakes so drastically that your working memory isn't overloaded and your amygdala doesn't register a threat.
It's lowering the bar so much that you can practically trip over it. You cannot reasonably argue that you don't have 5 minutes.
And the second practical habit targets physical or routine-based goals.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to build an exercise habit, the daily task is do 1 push-up.
One single push-up.
1 single push-up. The goal isn't a grueling, optimized 60-minute high-intensity interval workout. Because on a Tuesday evening when you are exhausted from work, you will skip the 60-minute workout.
Oh, absolutely.
But you will not skip 1 push-up. The power of these specific tasks, the 5 minutes, the 1 push-up, is that they redefine what success looks like on a daily basis.
It's like compound interest for your daily routine. A penny a day actually builds wealth, while waiting around to win the lottery leaves you broke.
That's a perfect way to phrase it.
They break the static friction. Think about a stalled car. If you have ever had to push a 2-ton vehicle in neutral, you know that the static friction, just getting the tires to rotate that very first inch, requires an agonizing amount of force. You have to push with everything you have.
Right.
But once the car is rolling, even just slightly, the kinetic friction takes over. Keeping it rolling is remarkably easy. The hardest part of any task is overcoming the static friction of starting.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, you can see how these low-stakes actions perfectly resolve the paradox of discipline we talked about earlier. True discipline was defined as finding the easy way.
Yeah.
Dropping to the floor for 1 push-up is easy. Opening a document and typing for 5 minutes is easy. It requires almost 0 willpower.
You don't need to summon a massive wave of motivation to do 5 minutes of work. You just sit down and do it. And the brilliance of the static friction analogy is that once you do those 5 minutes, the friction of starting is gone. You are already in motion. Very often, you end up writing for 30 minutes or an hour because the barrier has been removed.
And this is the crucial element of the strategy, even if you stop right there. Even if you literally only do 1 push-up and then walk away, or write for 5 minutes and close the laptop, you still won the day.
Because the overarching habit isn't about the volume of work produced in a single day. The habit is doing small things often.
Exactly.
The neurological mechanism at play here is identity shift. When you do one push-up every single day, you are literally rewiring your brain's perception of who you are. You transition from someone who fails to stick to a workout plan to someone who works out every day. The volume is irrelevant at first. The consistency of the identity is what matters.
Slow, sustainable consistency is the only kind that lasts. The illusion of the perfect tool, the trap of the massive master plan, they are just sophisticated mechanisms designed to keep us safely frozen in our own potential. Action, even flawed, tiny, seemingly insignificant action, is the only way to shatter the freeze response.
So to everyone listening right now, think about that physical sensation we started with. The perfectly brewed coffee, the clear desk, and the crushing weight of that massive to-do list. If you were sitting there right now feeling overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what you want to achieve, you need to abandon the massive plans. Right now.
Just drop them.
Stop shopping for the ultimate productivity app. Close the tabs reviewing the newest digital workspace architecture. Embrace the low-stakes approach. Just do your 5 minutes of work. Just do your one push-up. Wash one dish. Write one terrible sentence. Let go of the fantasy of perfect execution, because good enough and in motion is remarkably, endlessly better than perfect and frozen.
This leaves us with a critical, counterintuitive question to consider, one that builds directly on the architecture of everything we've analyzed today.
Let's hear it.
If striving for perfect work is the exact trigger that overloads our cognitive RAM and stops us cold, and if embracing a little, even if it's not very good, is the true neurological key to bypassing paralysis, what if the ultimate secret to a lifetime of high productivity isn't trying to be excellent?
What is it then?
What if the deepest secret is giving yourself absolute, unwavering permission to deliberately do a bad job every single day? Just guarantee that you actually begin.
Deliberately doing a bad job just to get the tires to roll that first inch? It completely neutralizes the terror of the blank page. Suddenly you aren't terrified of the mountain you have to climb, you're just focusing on taking one deeply imperfect step.